Hello everyone, I'm Nikade Sriudastuti, and in this great occasion, I would like to present my paper entitled Integrating Literary Works in an English Classroom to Improve Students' Critical Thinking. So this is the table of contents of these presentations. There are introduction, literature review, research methodology, research findings, and also conclusion. Introduction. Critical thinking is an essential skill that should be possessed by students, and it is believed that critical thinking is not only important for inside classroom learning but also outside the classroom. It is mentioned in a study by Shukri and Mukundan in 2015 that by having the skills, students could make better judgment, problem solving, reasoning skill, and also have critical awareness. This can support students in responding to an issue more critically and get them ready for the workforce. Thus, because of that, it is important to nurture and develop students' critical thinking in the classroom learning. However, in reality, not many teachers pay attention to this issue. In study by Ilyas 2017, he found that in Indonesia, English class had not taken students' critical thinking seriously. For example, teachers rarely integrate literary works in the English classroom learning. In fact, integrating literature in the English classroom is one of the effective ways in improving students' critical thinking based on a study by Pardede in 2019. This includes teaching and using poems, short stories, novels, or other forms of literary works to support the learning process and foster students to think critically in their learning. By integrating learning with literary works, students could get more meaningful and engaging learning experiences, and it gives students more opportunities to discuss literary texts and relate them to the current issues in the real world. In study by Stefanova and Bobkina 2017, it found that both students and teachers perceive the model of literature integration in the classroom as highly effective to improve critical thinking skill. Thus, to address the issue, it is important to conduct this research to find out how teachers integrate literary works in English class to improve students' critical thinking with following research questions. First, how does a teacher integrate literary works in an English classroom? Second, how does the integration of literary works in an English classroom improve students' critical thinking? And the last, how do students perceive the integration of literary works to improve critical thinking in an English classroom? The findings of this research are expected to contribute to the field of English class pedagogy and curriculum development by evaluating instructors' teaching strategies and students' perspective on the integration of literary works in the English classroom learning. Literature review. So this is the theoretical framework used in this research to explain the research keywords. And this is some of relevant research of this present research. The main issues discussed in this research is how the literary works integration could improve students' critical thinking. This research is based on the literature integration model by Kalansis and Cope 2000, which consists of a situated practice, offered instruction, critical framing, and transform practice, and approaches in teaching literature based on research by Mustaqim Mustafa and Lebar in 2014. Research methodology. So here the research method and procedure of this present research. The participants of this research are a teacher and 9 students of an 11th grade class at International High School in Medan. This school was chosen by taking into account the rationale that there is a need for schools that have implemented literature integration in teaching and learning activities in the classroom. Then this research used two research instruments, which are observation sheet adapted from Mustaqim et al. In 2014 and questionnaire adapted from Hassan and Hassan 2019. This present research utilized a qualitative research approach that involved collecting non-numerical data as well as analyzing it qualitatively. This approach was chosen to gain a deeper understanding and to explore more the ideas of integrating literary works to improve students' critical thinking in classroom learning from both the teacher and the students. Research finding. So this is the finding of the first research question, how a teacher integrates literary works in an English classroom. It was observed that there was implementation of information-based approach and personal response approach. It was also observed there was the implementation of stylistic approach but no moral philosophical approach implementation. Based on the observation table, it shows that the personal response approach is the most commonly employed approach. Other approaches found were information-based approach and stylistic approach, while the moral philosophical approach was not found specifically during the observations. The use of approaches found in learning literary works in the classroom during observation is then categorized based on four components of multiliteracy pedagogy, namely situated practice, overt instruction, critical framing, and transform practice. Situated practice is aimed to activate student schemata on the topic to be discussed in literary works. It was observed that their use of personal response approach in warm-up activities. For example, the teacher asked the students to share their experiences in reading books or watching movies before reading literary works in class. Second, overt instruction. Students do a reading activity to comprehend the literary works in general. There was observed the use of information-based approach to elicit information from students and to check students' understanding. For example, the teacher gave a comprehension question to students after reading the literary works. Third, critical framing, where students link the language forms and socio-cultural context of the literary works. There was observed that there was use of a stylistic approach to analyze certain words or lines of the literary works. For example, the teacher assigned students to find the meaning of difficult words encountered when reading literary works to better understand the context of the text. And the last is transform practice, where there was activity to analyze the characters from an act play in order to make an essay, where transform practice is where the students create their own text. This is the finding of the second research question, how integrating literary works could improve students' critical thinking. There are three indicators observed that could indicate that the integration of literary works improves students' critical thinking, which are literary works analysis activity, literary works that related to real-life experiences, and students' involvement and teacher feedback in the learning process. Literary works analysis. Students are required to look at the content of the literary works more deeply to make their own interpretation and judgment. For example, this is related to where the students analyze the literary works and should pay attention to certain words and lines for interpreting it. According to Alwyn 2014, critical thinking could be developed through learning activities that help students understand the meaning of literary works by demonstrating their ability to recognize both the literal meaning and inferred meaning of the literary works. Second, literary works that related to real-life experiences. Students are improving their problem-solving abilities through the study of literary works, which they can apply to their daily life. For example, in analyzing and finding problem-solving in literary works, students can express their opinion and judgment based on things they have experienced before. This finding is in line with what was found by Tabakova in 2015, which states that thinking about literary works could reflect the thinking about real-life situations. And the third, students' involvement and teachers' feedback in learning process. Students are given an opportunity to be directly involved by presenting ideas and participating in discussion. For example, it was found that the teacher often gave follow-up questions to students to elaborate on their responses. Thus, it can encourage students to think critically and explore new ideas. Shukran Mukundan 2015 in their research suggests that teachers should not only focus on employing one approach in integrating literature, but also the need to be able to create a conducive classroom environment to promote active learning. And this is the finding of the third research question. Students' perception of literary works integration in the classroom to improve students' critical thinking. Based on the questionnaire results, it shows that students give positive response that integrating literary works in the English classroom could first improve students' involvement in learning, second, improve students' self-reflection ability, and third, improve the way students express opinion and judgment more critically. The positive perception of students toward the integration of literary works in the classroom in increasing students' involvement in learning shows a suitability where students' direct interaction with literary works could keep students active in thinking. It demonstrates that they have engaged in more critical thinking about the assigned literary works than just learning what to think about, because they have better self-reflection abilities and are able to communicate their thoughts and judgment more critically. Conclusion. So then, based on the findings of the research, there are three conclusions that can be drawn. First, the observed teacher has integrated literary works based on the four components of multiliteracy pedagogy, although in different portions. The teacher mostly employed a personal response approach to foster students' engagement and participation. Second, literary works analysis activities that use authentic materials by paying attention to students' engagement in learning can foster students' critical thinking. And the last, almost all of the students observed gave a positive response that literary works analysis helped them when giving opinions and judgment more critically. That's all the contents of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.